Welcome to the Fintech One-on-One podcast. This is Peter Renton, chairman and co-founder of Fintech Nexus. I've been doing these shows since 2013, which makes this the longest-running one-on-one interview show in all of fintech. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you like this podcast, you should check out our sister shows, Pitch It, the Fintech Startups podcast with Todd Anderson, and Fintech Coffee Break with Isabel Castro. Or you can listen to everything we produce by subscribing to the Fintech Nexus podcast channel. Before we get started, I want to talk about our flagship event, Fintech Nexus USA, happening in New York City on May 10th and 11th. The world of finance continues to change at a rapid pace, but we will be separating the wheat from the chaff, covering only the most important topics for you over 2 action-packed days. More than 10,000 one-on-one meetings will take place, and the biggest names in fintech will be on our keynote stage. You know you need to be there, so go ahead and register at fintechnexus.com and use the discount code PODCAST for 15% off. Today on the show, I am delighted to chat again with Shivani Siroya, the CEO and founder of Tala. Now, if you don't know Tala, they are doing amazing work around the world, really helping onboard the underserved, the unbanked into the digital financial world. And they've done this have done 4 different countries so far. We obviously talk a lot about what they've done, how they've done it. We talk about the typical borrower, what they use the money for when they borrow money from Tala. We talked about how they measure their impact. We talked about underwriting and engagement and how they maintain engagement with their customers. We talk about overcoming a barrier of mistrust. We talk about financial education and their scale and much more. It was a fascinating discussion. Hope you enjoy the show. Welcome back to the podcast, Shivani.
Thank you so much for having me back.
All right. Yes, it's been almost 6 years since we had you on. It's hard to believe. Time flies. But let's start off with maybe talking about how you describe Tala today and what might have been different over the last almost 6 years.
The way I would describe Tala has changed a little bit. But what hasn't changed is our use of technology and the fact that we are global. So I would describe us as being a global technology company that is focused on serving the world's underbanked or unbanked, and that we're uniquely designed for their needs and their financial lives. What we've developed is an Android application that allows us to deliver a holistic suite of financial products to the global underserved.
Right. I want to talk about your mission because you keep good company these days. I was watching you with the Queen of the Netherlands and CEO of Visa at the World Economic Forum in Davos earlier this year, where you talked about your mission of enabling financial agency. And I wonder if you could just define that for us.
So we describe financial agency as the ability for an individual to be a true agent of their financial lives, to be able to choose the right products for them at the right time, to be able to have control and awareness of those products, as well as understand, again, when to use those products within their financial life. And then really it ultimately comes into the ability to access. And so we think of it as almost like a kind of stack. So we think of access, choice, and control.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then maybe you could tell us what countries you operate in. I know you've added some countries since we last chatted. And then how do you decide? I mean, there's lots of countries in the world, obviously, that have a need for what you provide. Tell us a little bit about how you decide where to go next.
Sure. So today we currently work in 4 countries around the world. We're currently working in Kenya, which is where we started. We've expanded to the Philippines, to Mexico, and to India. And when we think about our next markets, at this point, we are truly global. And so it is about really thinking about a regional expansion.
Mm-hmm.
And so we think of it as effort to opportunity. Every market will require our team's attention, even if we start small and then start to grow. Because for us, it is really about, yes, global platform, but it is also about how we customize and localize the product. And so it requires effort. And so when we think about what goes into our scorecard, it is thinking of where is the need the largest? Which country has the largest percentage of underserved customers in their market? The second thing we think about is serviceability. And so rather than thinking about how most, I think companies would say total addressable market, we really think of it as defining a serviceable addressable market and saying with what we've developed today in terms of our global infrastructure, where can we actually enter with ease? And where would we then, if we can't enter with ease, how much effort would be required to, again, get to the majority of the underserved? So how much do we have to kind of do a new build on? And then you start to get into the basics of, do you need a banking license, a credit license? How hard is it to set up an entity? How do you think about flows of money and repatriation? Those kinds of things, currency fluctuation, political risk. But we really start from a place of, with what we have today, how many people can we serve in a given new market? And how much effort would be required to do any new work to get into that market?
Right. And so how different are the markets? Because I imagine you talk about 4 different countries there that all have very different infrastructure when it comes to finance, very different types of people, it seems. So how do you sort of adapt to each market within your core product?
So for us, the one dependency I would call out is we're an Android application.
Mm-hmm.
But the beauty of that is that there are 1.8 billion Android devices in emerging markets alone.
Right.
And the majority of those individuals that hold those devices are the individuals that we are designed for because of the price point. So the price point of an Android device is sub $50 across most markets. And really in our markets, you can find a good device under $25. So in that sense, our reach is very strong. In terms of the similarities outside of Android technology, it's also that these markets are primarily cash-based. And so 85% of those individuals are transacting in cash. And that's also what we've done is built one of the most interoperable payment layers within our supply chain or infrastructure. And so we've now integrated with the likes of remittance providers, bill payment providers, traditional banks, mobile wallets, as well as kind of, I would say, retail chains like 7-Elevens or Oxxos. And so we're designed really for this customer, wherever they are, whether it's cash, whether it's digital, or whether it's a traditional kind of wire transfer. In that sense, what we've done is actually kind of taken what we see as the fragmentation and consolidated it into our supply chain so that it does match the way the rest of the world is set up.
Right. Okay. Like, are people that are operating in cash in most of these markets, is there any resistance to, obviously you're a digital app and I imagine you obviously interface with the cash economy, but for someone to sort of use your app, they've obviously got to feel like it's worth their while. Like, I'm just curious about the resistance that some of these populations have to digital where they're used to using cash.
So maybe I want to clarify one thing, which is the application itself, in terms of applying to be a part of the Tala ecosystem, is digital. It's a mobile app. But from there, in terms of once we've approved a customer, we've credit scored them, we've approved them, and now it's a matter of thinking of what channel do they want to, let's say, either use their money in, so they can, again, use their money to pay a bill, they can send it somewhere, they can keep it in their wallet, or they can say, no, I want to take this out and pay physically for a product at a store, pay a bill physically, or just cash out, right? At that point, they are able to go and get physical cash because we're integrated into 360,000 different cash in and cash out systems.
Right. That makes sense.
That's the big difference, is that we recognized really early on that to gain their trust, we needed to do two things. One is we needed to have higher approval rates than others in the market because this customer has never been trusted. So we have to show them that we're willing to take the risk on them and give them value first. And then the second piece is the ability for them to touch and feel their money and know that it's real. Now that we've moved beyond credit and we've given that experience of trust and the ability to touch and feel your money, now saying, hey, if you leave your money with us, we can give you even better, kind of benefits within this ecosystem. It's a much easier sell.
Right. So are you finding that a good portion of your customers are, starting to kind of ease their way into a digital type format when it comes to finance?
The Philippines is the first market that we've launched the full Tala account in.
Okay.
And in that market, we are seeing a really strong uptick.
Okay. So then maybe you could just describe, I imagine it differs quite markedly between countries, but I mean, are these people using Tala to buy groceries, to pay bills, to use it for their business? I mean, what are the major use cases?
So what we see, it does vary by market. And again, this is a lot of where that cultural nuance comes in. Mm-hmm. So what we see in Kenya is that over 70% of people use it for a business purpose. That's also because digital credit has already been established in that market even before Tala got there. Right? So M-Pesa and M-Shwari existed before us. Mm-hmm. What we came in and provided was, again, a faster product, an unsecured product, and then now adding these other value propositions within that. So I would say in that sense, you see it much more for entrepreneurial reasons. In the Philippines, what you see is that 80% of people will use us more for the likes of a credit card. So they'll use us much more in day-to-day needs, paying bills, like you mentioned, improving quality of life, as opposed to immediately using us to start a business. And then what you find is actually that, once a customer comes in and uses it for one specific need, then the next time they'll come back and use it for a different need. And that's what I think, is something that we don't talk about enough within, I think, the fintech landscape, is this idea of fluidity within one's financial life. We don't always need to create discrete products, but instead we really need to be thinking about the flows of money within an ecosystem.
Right. Got it. One of the things that I think is really important for a company like yours and for anyone sort of operating in this inclusion space, and that is to sort of measure the impact. I mean, it's one thing to serve all these people, but it's another thing to actually know the measurable impact you're having. I'm really curious about this survey. It just came out, I think it was just earlier this month, and you conducted an impact survey. And I wonder if you could just touch on some of the highlights that you found as far as the impact that you're having.
So we did a third-party study with 60 decibels, as well as two other academic institutions with Harvard and UC Berkeley. And we studied Tala's impact. We surveyed over 1,000 customers that have been using us for a while. So these aren't first-time customers. And what we found was that 2/3 of customers told us that they did not have this kind of access prior to Tala. So there was no other good alternative in the market that they could point to other than Tala that would give them this kind of liquidity access. The second thing that we found was that 80% of respondents reported a higher improvement in their quality of life and within their financial confidence. So again, talking about markers that don't just have to do with, yes, I have more income and that's leading to greater confidence and security, but it's this idea of my mindset and psychology has entirely changed. And now I'm accessing other products that I otherwise did not have access to before. And then the last thing I think that we get really excited about is that we then dove in deeper into the data and found that 8 out of 10 women within that study also reported the greater ability to make financial decisions within their households. And so they were also saying that they themselves felt more empowered as decision makers. And so now you're actually seeing it at different levels. Yes, at the individual level, you're seeing that there's this impact on, again, more financial security being reported, greater access, greater financial confidence. But then you're also seeing the multiplier effect coming within a household.
Right. I want to dig into the approval process and the underwriting process that you have. In your World Economic Forum panel, you talked about a new kind of credit score that you've created. Can you maybe give us a little bit of background into how you create that? What are the data points you're using? Because you say you've got a high approval rate. There aren't well-developed credit infrastructure in these countries. So you're sort of flying blind in some ways. So tell us a little bit about that process.
I'm chuckling a little bit in terms of when you say flying blind a little bit, because I think the entire premise of Tala and the ethos of Tala is this idea of, it's really, being built from the person up.
Mm-hmm.
And when we think about it, I personally really think we've been thinking about credit scoring top down, as opposed to what is the individual doing every day, right? And for us, that's really how we started. We really started from a place of how do we actually seamlessly access the data of one's life, one's sort of consistency in paying bills, what they do throughout the day, the patterns, the context of their daily life. And so we've just continued to build on that kind of ethos, I would say, because of the fact that we now engage with our customers in other financial products outside of just credit. So now, when we started, it was, hey, can we create a proprietary credit score using this mix of Android data as well as our own application data, demographic data, and behavioral data? Where we've gone is to say, now that we have more engagement with these customers in terms of whether it's taking a financial literacy quiz or course within our app, and what questions do they answer? What modules have they read? Whether it's, connecting with our customer advocates, or if it's making payments through our, again, bill payment providers, or if it's depositing money with us, right? Each of these different discrete actions comes into our scoring ability and our ability to then not just have a different way to help this customer understand their journey within Tala, but ultimately to really provide what we would call the right product at the right time for them.
Right. So then you mentioned that you're taking the data from the phone, you're taking behavioral data, demographic data, that sort of thing. So when someone comes to you for the first time, and obviously you've got a lot of history now, you serve millions and millions of people. So I'm sure you've got a pretty robust way of measuring these people. So if someone comes to you for the first time, you don't have the financial data, but you have lots of other, I presume what you've done is you've found all this other data that is very predictive of financial behavior. And I know you probably don't want to give away your secret sauce, but I'd love to get a little bit more color on the types of data that really is most predictive.
Sure. And what I would also say that, we also have to think about the cases in which somebody has a new phone, right?
Right.
And there is no data, right? So then you're looking at it as I have the identity data coming in from the application, KYC, and then the behavioral application data. And so we've had to think of it as you can't rely on everything being available all the time. So how do you almost have different models, what we call fallback models, that can allow us to still score and keep that kind of high approval rate? What we've added in is also this idea of rethinking the experience and how you onboard a customer, which may have different risk levels. And so because we have the ability to have customers deposit, if we don't know enough about a customer and we think that they are too risky, how can we get a new behavioral signal? And we've seen this in other developed markets as well, which is credit builder products.
Right.
Or essentially, can we get the customer to take a behavioral action before giving them something in return? And so I think that's what we've really studied over the last year is what is the right amount of friction versus our ability to show them that we can trust them and provide value, right? The difference here is we need to be greater on the trust side than on the friction point. And so we need to be more seamless than others in the market because this customer has been, given failed promises so many times. And so that's what I would say is that it's not just this kind of alternative data, it's also matching the experience with the customer base that you're trying to bring in and being slightly, I think, greater on the risk-taking side.
Right, right. So let's talk about engagement because this is something that I think when you've got a lending product, oftentimes you lend the money out and they pay back, and it's not a sort of an active engagement. I know you talked about you're expanding into account type products, but how are you doing this, engaging with your customers beyond the lending product?
So beyond lending, we do now have a full financial account, allowing our customers to save money with Tala and also be able to pay all of their essential bills through Tala as well.
Okay. And then is that available throughout your geographies, or are you still rolling that out?
We're still rolling it out. We started with the Philippines, and then we'll follow it up in our other markets later this year.
Okay. Okay. And then you've talked about trust quite a bit, and I'm curious about the establishment of trust. And do people kind of, when they first engage with you, is there sort of this stance of mistrust? You've talked about these people who have been burned before. So how do you overcome that barrier of mistrust?
One of our founding principles at Tala is take the first risk. And so one of the best ways is to be the one that brings them into the ecosystem before anyone else does. So I would say that, we really do need to show that our approval rates are going to be greater than the traditional financial system or others in our market. And that's the way that we win trust greater than anyone else in the market, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that that's what you do at the first, interaction point. But then, it doesn't stay that. You need to think of it as what are the additional benefits that you're giving them over the long term. And I think that is what makes us very different is our business model is not around a transactional product. We're not trying to earn as much as possible in the short term, but we acquire a customer looking at the lifetime value of what, we expect to earn over more than just a 12-month period of time. Mm-hmm. And so I think that is the really big difference in us, but it also allows us to really have that focus on retention and sustainability.
Right, right. And so then what about financial education? Is this a big part of what you're doing once you have them engaged? Is financial literacy an achievable goal? Because a lot of people just want to have money. They don't necessarily want to learn about money. And I'd love to get with your kind of customer base, what is their attitude towards all that?
We think that it is necessary to do both, to provide both financial products and to do the financial literacy. And it goes back to what our mission is as a company. Our mission is to ensure that these customers become financial agents. And so if they don't have the know-how of not only the products within our ecosystem, but really understanding what's happening within their financial lives, then we're not fulfilling our mission. And so within our app, we're really excited that at this point, we've now provided over 2.8 million customers access to financial literacy courses, all within the app experience.
Interesting.
What we've done is not just stop there. We've actually said in places where it's possible, how do we also create physical communities and also looking at other channels outside of just the app? So we have Facebook communities, we have WhatsApp courses, and then we also have physical courses that we've done and partnered with local governments.
Right, right. That makes sense. So last time we chatted, I remember something, I still remember this distinctly because it really blew me away. You said you were one of the top 5 most downloaded apps in Kenya. There was WhatsApp and Facebook and Instagram and one other, and then Tala. I mean, are you still seeing that kind of traction? What can you tell us about how you're kind of rolling out across the 4 different countries and the traction that you're getting?
So across all of our markets in the Google Play Store, our app is rated 4.8 or greater. So in that sense, I think customers really like us. And, again, we've provided a high quality experience and kept that rating over time. I think the other thing that's happened while Tala has been growing has been the fintech sector.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I think it's more, we are at the top of digital or financial services companies across our markets, but we can't say that we are just, a top 5 app in the market, just because, again, the ecosystem has gotten much larger.
Right. So then how many customers have you served now? And what's the number that are maintaining engagement?
So we've now served close to 8 million customers across our 4 countries, and we've delivered over 3 billion in access to credit across these markets.
Okay. So, you have 4 different markets in 4 different regions of the world, although you could say that India and the Philippines are close to one region, but still a bit of distance between them. What's it like? I mean, are you hopping on planes and hanging out in Kenya one week, Mexico the next, Philippines and India? I mean, what's it like managing a company that is in such diverse regions?
I think it comes down to ensuring that you have really strong leadership, not just at the executive level, but again, within each market. And so across every country, we have full country leadership teams. We have really, really strong general managers that are, again, previous entrepreneurs themselves. And so they're thinking about their markets, not just as, oh, I'm here to run this market, but it's really thinking about how do I exponentially make this market better? How do I think about this as it's my business that I am constantly improving and thinking about? And so because they come in with that kind of founder mindset and entrepreneurial bent, they're not just, again, managing. They're always thinking about product market fit. And so they themselves are in the market talking to customers, working alongside their product and engineering teams. I think the other thing that we've done is really thought of, again, how do we build both that global infrastructure as well as the ability to be modular and localize. And so what we've done is put our product and engineering teams really close to our customers. We have 3 engineering hubs around the world, one in the US, one in Kenya and Nairobi, and then one in Bangalore in India. And this allows us, again, to create that customization and that nuance that I was talking about.
Mm-hmm. Are you still based in, I think it was Santa Monica or Southern California somewhere?
We are, but we are 100% remote,
Okay.
but we still have our offices across our markets and, try to regularly meet up. But again, I think the pandemic for us allowed us an equalizing experience. And so anyone that's in one of our countries is just as close to me as somebody sitting in our US office.
Right.
And so I think in that sense, it created a lot more accessibility and communication.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so how many people do you have now?
Across the team, we're now a little over 500 people.
Okay, well, so it's a good size. Okay, so then last question. Like, what is your vision now for Tala? I mean, as I said at the beginning, there's a lot of countries where this kind of product is needed. Are you planning world domination?
I would call it more, world financial inclusion. But
okay, yes. Yes, fair enough.
But yeah, I would say that what we've done is really focused on building that foundation, right? So we focused first on going wide and the ability to, again, have credit models that can work across countries and really ensure that the first value we were providing to the customer was working. Right? Do we have a sustainable portfolio? And can we expand that across 3 continents? Yes. From there, we said, okay, we need to continue to refine that and have larger loan sizes, lower interest rates, the ability to create revolving lines, again, really continue to evolve that first experience. Alongside that, we said we need to also deepen the value we can provide to the customer. And so that's why we started building vertically. And so we built the, again, infrastructure to enable these other financial products and keeping credit at the core of that ecosystem. Now that we have that full stack experience and we understand the engagement loops, now we would go back to thinking about expansion and saying, how do we bring this entire experience now into new countries?
Okay, well, we'll have to leave it there, Shivani. Great to chat with you again. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you like the show, please go ahead and give it a review on the podcast platform of your choice. And be sure to tell your friends and colleagues about it. Anyway, on that note, I will sign off. I very much appreciate you listening, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.